Beyond Lumina, Episode 11, Pursuit. You're telling me that you let 3 pirates overpower you, and you call yourselves Ascendancy soldiers? Drop verbally cut down his subordinates after he came to, and found they had been imprisoned on their own vessel. What pirates are so menacing to you that you would just surrender the ship to them? The Ascendancy soldiers had escaped the bonds in which Aezic and the others put them, but they were still trapped inside the room. It's the Fireblade pirates, said one of the soldiers, the same one who had spoken to the group when they attacked the bridge. The who? Drop asked, not recognizing the name at all. Led by Madame Fireblade, the soldier continued. They're extremely well armed. We didn't have a chance, sir. And now they have our weapons as well, Drop said angrily. And perhaps you're lucky that they do, or I'd kill you myself. We need to find a way out of here, and retake the ship, or we are doomed. The Ascendancy will not comply with any of their demands. We had to disguise ourselves to keep Drop and his men from recognizing us, or tying this attack back to Kostia, Aezic told Photoglaus, after seeing his amused, inquisical look. Their pirate disguises were good enough that it took Glaus a moment to recognize Aezic when he came through the door. That's quite ingenious, the Photor said with a slight smile. What is your plan now? You'll all have to stay here a little while longer, Aezic now spoke to the whole group of Kostians. We are going to do what we can to convince their commanders that we are after the ship and are holding their soldiers hostage until we're safe. It shouldn't take much more to convince them that we don't care who the others are on board, and that we plan to get rid of you as quickly as the soldiers. After that, we should be able to get safely back to Kostia. We are very grateful for your help, Glaus replied. We're just returning your favor, Aezic answered, withholding further comments. When Aezic returned to the bridge, Bala had successfully disabled the ship's tracker and masked the signature, effectively hiding it from the Ascendancy. She had just begun to set a new course for them. Zario had gone off to make sure they had not missed any of the enemy crew. Good, Aezic said. Get ready. Now that we dropped off their systems, their superiors will be contacting us. Sure enough, the ship's comms were opened and an irritated voice rang through the room. Drop, what is going on? Why have we lost your location? Drop is currently indisposed, Bala replied, with her best pirate impression. To whom am I speaking? You fool, came the response. Do you realize you've hijacked an Ascendancy military vessel? Of course, Bala said. You don't exactly keep your identity a secret. I am Madame Fireblade, and I plan on taking this fine ship for myself. No harm will come to your crew as long as you leave us alone. You can have them back once we're safely out of your space. I don't have the patience for games, the Ascendancy superior answered. Who are you really? You are assisting the Kostians, aren't you? So that's who the others on board are, Bala said, trying to sound ambivalent. We don't care about them either. Don't pursue us, and you can have them back too. You act as though you know who you deal with, the voice returned. But you don't seem to know that we will not negotiate with pirates. And unfortunately for you, we were awaiting the arrival of your ship and watching you closely. We will find you shortly, and we are not opposed to destroying our own vessel to keep it out of the hands of pirates. Bala looked at the others with concern. So, what's plan B? Zario returned just in time to hear the question. The ship is clear. What's happening? We just got off comms with Drop's commander. The Ascendancy is coming for us, and it sounds like they're close. We need to get rid of these soldiers, Aezic answered, and get as far away from here in Kostia as possible for now. Simple, Zario said. Just cut off the atmosphere to the room, and let's go. You're that comfortable with killing all those defenseless soldiers? Aezic asked him, surprised. He, however, remembered Zario's orders to his crew back on Ravina, at the outpost in Animov. I'm not comfortable with it, but if it's between that or stopping somewhere and risking the Ascendancy catching us, Zario answered, then I'm at least willing. There's a better way of doing this, Aezic retorted. We're not resorting to the same tactics as these people. And how do you plan on getting them off the ship? Zario pressed Aezic. Did you think they would just be guided politely out of that room? We can handle a handful of these grunts, Aezic said. or I'll do it myself if you aren't going to help." "You're insane," Zario conceded. "Those guys wouldn't hesitate to put you down." "Exactly," Aezic replied. "Why would you want to act like them?" After finally giving in, Aezic explained how they might onboard the captive soldiers without them seeing Zario or himself, by knocking them out by altering the environment within the room, but they would wait until they were nearing a place to drop them off. In the meantime, the trio did their best to choose a direction they thought would put distance between them and the pursuing Ascendancy ship. Private Kvass of the Sor military gazed around the city square of his home, Ridikin, a modestly sized city for the planet. He was off duty, currently enjoying a special Saurian beverage at his favorite shop that overlooked the central market of Ridikin. The city itself was quite contemporary, being primarily fashioned out of synth metal. Sor was mostly flat and drier than many other inhabited planets in Lumina's system, but the ancient civilizations there had built near what elevated and wet land they could find, and those foundations were where the current cities now stood. Ridikin was one of those cities, and remained its humble size even when newer cities continued to expand. The people who lived in Ridikin also held on to their more ancient traditions. Private Kvass himself was from a family whose past in that city went back further than memory could recall. The Saurian people, while coming together in recent centuries, had always remained within distinct groups around the planet, as the vast majority tended to remain within their own region's boundaries. Despite their cultural distinctions, all of the people of Sor valued the past, attributed sometimes to their ability to see, in some areas of the world, the true physical foundations of their people. Kvass was one who took great pride in his heritage, whether others did or not. While coming from one of the older families, they were nevertheless not always respected. They in fact first appear on the scene of history due to their infamy. In an ancient war that was since amended, one of his ancestors was placed in charge of a dire mission to bring supplies and reinforcements to his allies. Not only had he failed in that task, but he and his battalion, some of whom were his relatives, turned on their own people and instead aided the enemy, bringing a disastrous conclusion to the war. After that, his ancestors who remained in Ridikin were shunned, kept from public life. But slowly, they began to make amends for the evils perpetrated by their traitors' family members. They labored in many different fields, but eventually found metalworking an area where they could best give back to their people. It began with several of his ancestors helping the local metalworker and doing such a fine job that a generation later they were able to open and run twice as many shops. While they never competed, Kvass's relatives eventually began to split from the business run by the primary metalworker's descendants, though the split was never a complete one, as the two families grew close over the years, and eventually merged so much that there now existed a subset of relatives that the two families shared, and these remain the primary owners of the now vast metalworking facilities of Ridikin in Kvass's own day. It has now been a while since Kvass's family began to regain their place in Ridikin society. When that started, many began to once more pursue a variety of other professions, from entertaining to exploring, even politics and diplomacy for a few. They remained wary, however, of rejoining the ranks of the military, even after the cities had come together to defend Sor from new extraterrestrial forces. Kvass believed, though, that there must be much more to their ancestors' military history than what was remembered. He imagined a glorious history preceding the fall of those relatives, whose treason overshadowed all that had been accomplished before them. He didn't know, but he was often convinced that it must be the case. His own family was a family of architects, who worked rather closely with the metalworkers, but once Kvass was old enough, he chose to enter the military, the first of his family to join since that fateful time ages before, while he had only just begun to understand what it meant to be a soldier. He knew that he could not let his family or his people down. As he gazed out into the crowded marketplace, with all of the new and traumatized faces of the refugees of Metezkar, he was reminded that he now had others he must call his own and protect. A while passed since the Ascendancy officer had contacted the ship that Aezic, Zario, and Vala had taken over. They hadn't gone back to the Kostian hostages, in case the Ascendancy soldiers in the other room would be alerted to their movements and become suspicious of their motives. But Aezic felt that by now, they should have been able to lose the pursuing Ascendancy ship, and now began searching for a suitable place to leave the prisoners. "We're not too far from Brunio," Vala commented, as she looked at the navigation terminal. "That might be a good spot." Brunio was an enormous, gaseous planet, but it had 3 moons, simply known to the major powers as Bru, Ni, and Al. They were all inhabited and classified as independent worlds, which had reached some form of advanced space technology, and thus had communication with at least one of the major powers. In the case of Brunio, they had dealings to some extent with all 3 powers, and welcomed them on planet. "Good," Aezic replied. "We'll be able to drop them wherever we want there, and should get away without much hassle." While considered to have advanced space technology, even some inherited from the major powers, the Brunelian moons, like other independent worlds, were not equipped to easily deal with something like the Ascendancy frigate that Aezic and the others occupied. Once arriving in Brunio's local space, Zario quickly made for the closest of the moons, Ni. Soon though, just before Aezic was going to knock out the captured Ascendancy soldiers, Vala, who was seated at the nav terminal, started an alarm. "It can't be. They're coming almost straight at us, off port. Our sensors are picking them up now. It's a battleship." "They must have guessed our destination," Aezic tried to think coolly. "Just get us out of here, Zario. We should be able to outrun them." "Don't have to tell me twice," Zario said, kicking the ship's throttle into top speed and veering right to gain distance from the pursuers. But the enemy ship had been making too direct a course toward them. "It's no good, they're in range," Vala nearly shouted. "Keep going," Aezic ordered. Then he ran to the engineering terminal, flipped some switches, then quickly ran out from the bridge. The ship's shields activated. "Wait, where are you?" "That's just great," Zario said, refocusing his attention on escaping. Aezic ran down the ship's corridors until he reached the room where the Kostian citizens were, and swung the door open. Photoglass and the others were startled. "Aezic, what's the matter?" he asked, after seeing some concern on the lieutenant's face. "The Ascendancy found us," Aezic began. People all began to panic. "Everyone needs to come with me to the bridge immediately." "Come on," Glass said. "You heard him." The voter waited until the other 8 citizens, 4 women, 3 elderly men, and a boy, made their way out before he finally followed. As they passed the room with the Ascendancy soldiers, Aezic could hear one demanding to know what was happening. Their questions were answered soon by a blast that shook the ship. Again, the Kostian citizens began to panic. "Let's go," Aezic shouted over them. "Follow me." They soon made it to the bridge, where Zario and Vala were almost just as shaken up as the Kostians. "What do we do, Zin?" Zario implored. "Aezic," Vala now spoke. "They're sending fighters." Aezic was about to answer, then one of his headaches hit him hard. He then thought for a moment he was having a flashback, but without any idea as to what he was flashing back to. Once he recomposed himself, he began. "Do any of you have any experience on a ship?" "I know you do, Glaus. I'll need you here." One of the old men spoke up. Yes, I used to fly one of the salvage ships." "Good," Aezic replied. "Take Zario's place on the helm. Keep us going directly away from the Ascendancy ship as fast as we can go. And you," he pointed to one of the women, "take Vala's station and watch the monitor. Make sure we stay right in front of their ship. Boater, take the engineering station and follow Vala's instructions." He then turned to Vala. "You'll need to help him keep the ship intact if we are fired on. I trust you have enough experience to do that. Zario and I are going to get on the guns, but you need to be here in case they try to contact Madame Fireblade." "Oh, okay," Vala said with some hesitation. "Got it. I can do this." "All right, let's go," Aezic said to Zario. "Wait," came another voice. It was the Kostian boy. "I want to come. I can help." "Have you ever seen a weapon before now, kid?" Aezic asked him. He knew there were more guns, though, and more people on them would certainly help. "No," he quietly answered. "But I want to help. I need to help." Aezic looked at the boy curiously. He's different from the others, he thought. "Fine, but you need to listen to everything I say." "Yes, sir," the boy said with a bit more confidence now. "What's your name?" Aezic then asked him. It's Artis, sir. Well, I'm happy to fight by your side, Artis, Aezic replied. And call me Aezic, and this is Zario. Now let's go. Aezic, Zario, and the young Kostian boy, Artis, then set off down another corridor, and soon came to two coves, one on the left and one on the right, each with a ladder leading up and down. Zario went down to the left and Aezic went up to the right, and motioned to Artis to go below him. Each of the spots were wired to communicate with the rest. The weapon system was relatively simple, so Aezic ran Artis through the basics, but then they soon ran out of time to prepare, as 8 fighters rushed toward them. Get ready, Aezic said, focusing. Remember to breathe, and don't tense up. Artis was feeling a mixture of nearly every emotion he ever had, from fear and anxiety, to excitement and anticipation, to guilt. He wasn't sure what was wrong with him. This isn't how a Kostian is supposed to feel, he thought. We are supposed to be peaceful, but why then, Omnis, are you asking me to do this? Before he got an answer, he was thrown back to reality by a hail of plasma fire from the team of fighters. He had missed their initial run. Hey, Aezic shouted, don't freeze up on me already, kid. I'm not, Artis yelled back, and he recommitted himself, turning in the weapons array for the next attack. For my people, he thought again, I can do it. The fighters came back around after making their first run, but one had already been blown to pieces by Aezic. The remaining 7 came 3 from one side and 4 from another on their second attack run from the bow of the frigate. Again, Aezic connected, sending one of the enemies spiraling back toward the enemy battleship. Zario too landed a good hit, blowing up a fighter's energy capacitor. Artis did not come close. They're so fast, was all his mind could comprehend before they were out of his range. The last 5 fighters coalesced once more behind their ship, then together ascended above the frigate. Watch out, Zin, Zario warned. I don't think they like you. I see them, Aezic said, trying to track the group that seemed to be gunning for him. You might want to get out of there, Zario said again nervously. The fighters spread their ranks into a V formation and fired on Aezic's weapons array. He was able to take out the lead fighter before a few blasts connected with his system. The others heard him cry out in pain. Aezic! Zario shouted with a tone of concern. I'm fine, came the reply, to his and Artis's relief. The array's fried, though, moving to the other. He deftly slid down the ladder, then stopped, addressing the Kostian boy. Don't worry, he reassured him. You can do this. He then crossed over the corridor and climbed the other ladder into the other weapons array above Zario. Artis didn't know it, but all the blood seemed to have drained from his face. He saw that the attack on Aezic had pierced through his synth plate and charred his left arm and shoulder. He was deathly afraid now, but he had no time to think about what was happening, because the last 4 fighters had now split ranks and were firing on them at will. He shot wildly at one of the fighters that passed by him, but again missed completely. He couldn't keep his hands steady. Zario took several shots at the remaining fighters as they passed by, and was finally successful in disabling one enough that it too had to return to the battleship, leaving 3 enemies. But then, one of the fighters landed a devastating blow to the ship. Oh, that can't be good, Zario said worriedly, as the ship reacted violently. By then, Aezic had made it to the other weapons array, and took out the fighter that had made contact with their frigate. One of the last 2 turned back toward the battleship, but Zario blasted it on its retreat. The last fighter was heading straight for Artis. Look sharp, kid, Aezic yelled. He's coming for you. Artis knew that. He tensed, but then tried to do what Aezic said. The fighter approached rapidly. His plasma fire sprayed all around Artis, nearly connecting with his weapon. He took a deep, shaky breath, then closed his eyes and fired away at the fighter. Then there was silence, soon broken by Aezic. You did it. Not bad, kid. Vala's extensive training in the New World Alliance military had hardly prepared her for a scenario such as this. She was nowhere near the rank to be commanding a ship. As the leader of a fighter squad, she hadn't even been part of a bridge crew yet, other than the little she had done with Aezic. Her officer training at least gave her knowledge on all the roles on the bridge. "Fodor," she started, once Aezic and the others left. "Get ready to work the shields." "Right," Glaus answered, and studied the engineering console's visual display a little while, which showed the shield's power, strength, and coverage. The enemy fighters flew past the bridge's viewport at blinding speed, raining plasma fire on them, then came around for their second attack run. Now aimed toward the bridge, Vala had Glaus pull shield power toward the bow of the ship. With no one on the bridge's weapons, they weren't able to fire on the fighters themselves. The system was so vastly updated from the old Ascendancy models he was used to that it was more foreign than Glaus imagined it would be, and it was all he could do to localize the shield toward the front of their vessel. Again, the fighters screamed past without doing much damage. As Vala watched them from the nav terminal, she then ordered Glaus to transfer the shield to the top of the ship. Aezic and the others are making short work of them, Vala thought. But Glaus was unable to figure out how to move the shield. It had been one thing to switch from full coverage to partial coverage, but it had begun by shielding the bow. Glaus looked at Vala sorrowfully. "I don't know what to do." Just then, plasma fire from the fighters connected with the ship, setting the other Kostian civilians off balance and into another fright. "Hurry," Vala told him. "Turn it back to full coverage of the ship." Glaus began to do as she said, but before the shield could react, another blast rocked their frigate, this time sounding as though it had done some serious damage. "The shield's set now," Glaus confirmed. "I'm sorry." "It's all right," Vala reassured him. "You did what you could." Soon the remaining fighters were defeated, and the people on the bridge breathed a sigh of relief, along with Aezic, Zario, and Artis on the weapons. "I think we made it," Vala said, as they continued to gain distance from the Ascendancy battleship. Moments later, Aezic and the others came through the bridge door. They didn't look as relieved as they should have. "Aezic, your arm," Vala started upon seeing Aezic's injury. "It's not that bad. Are any of you ship mechanics?" he asked everyone on the bridge. "I know a little from salvaging," Glaus answered. "Follow me, hurry," Aezic replied. Glaus, now worried once more, followed Aezic and Zario quickly back out from the bridge. Turning down a few corridors, they finally came to the source of the concern. It was the energy capacitor. Glaus looked at it for a short time, then his face became grave. "We need to get off the ship as soon as possible," he told the others, then pointed to what was a large, sparking tube running above the corridor. "It's beyond repair. This ship has a dual system. This is the coupling running to this side of the ship, but the system is destroyed over here. This coupling is going to keep trying to feed the broken system and overload it. Then the energy capacitor will explode, along with the rest of the ship." "Are you kidding?" Zario blurted out. "Is there anything you can do to put it off?" Aezic asked. "Can we disable the coupling?" "It would take resetting the entire capacitor, which would require a full stop," Glaus said. "The Ascendancy would surely catch us in the meantime. But it might be our only choice. I can make a few repairs to hold off the inevitable for a little longer, but that's all it will be doing." "Do it," Aezic told him. "Zario, help him with whatever he needs." "Sure," Zario said. "I certainly don't have anything better to do." Aezic went back to the bridge and relayed the update, after Artis had already given them the initial news. The Kostians began to panic. All but Artis. Aezic tried to bring order. "Please, this isn't helping. We're going to get out of this." He looked at the nav array and tried to plot a new course to the closest planet that still kept them away from the battleship. They weren't too far from the next planet, but it was a pre-space age world, a world that hadn't yet had contact with any space age civilizations. The closest civilized planet was not very close at all, but they didn't have any other choice. "Okay," Aezic began again. "Give us a slight turn starboard. We're heading for Kithmir." "A Federation planet?" Vala asked, stunned. "And won't the Ascendancy guess where we're going again?" "There's nothing we can do about it," Aezic answered. "Hopefully the Ascendancy doesn't suspect we're disabled, and they'll call off the chase. And hopefully the Federation doesn't immediately fire on us." Hope was all they could do. Hope the Ascendancy turned around. Hope the Tansorian Federation would give them a chance. and hoped the Glass's patch job would hold long enough. It was a lot more hoping than Aezic was used to. "Something is going on out there, I tell you," Drop said to the rest of his crew, trapped in a storage room on their own ship. He was near the door and was listening to the sound of footsteps rushing past them down the corridor. "Hey," he yelled, "let us out of here, you pirate scum! You're only making things worse for yourselves!" Just then, the ship was shaken by a heavy blast. Drop spun around and stared wide-eyed, as though he could see their attackers through the ship's hull. "We're out of time. They're here." The captured Ascendancy soldiers could hear much of the fight that took place against the fighters, including the hit to the energy capacitor. But they were surprised when the firefight ceased and the ship was still in one piece. "Could they have actually won, leader?" one of the soldiers asked. "No," Drop replied. "No, they would have only made him angry. Very angry. Those pirates are doomed." Aezic, Zario, Vala, and the Kostians tore through space as fast as the Ascendancy frigate would take them, trying to make their way to the Federation planet of Kithmir. Vala patched up Aezic as best she could, and they were making a good heading. Aezic began to think they might actually be able to get there, but whether or not the Federation would let them land was another story. He hoped Kithmir would be more lenient than Tan or Sor, the Federation's core worlds. Just as hope began growing inside him, there was a crashing noise, and the engineering monitor began violently blinking red. "The repairs aren't holding," Glass cried out. "I don't know how much longer the capacitor will last." Aezic rushed back over to the nav array. "This deity of yours exists," he thought. "He doesn't seem to care much about you." Aezic looked at the console, searching for somewhere else, anywhere else, that they could land. Then he shouted to the old Kostian at the helm. "Hard to starboard, now! Change of course!" "Where are we going?" Vala asked. She was shaken up, but she was conscious of the fact that she was less afraid now than when they were drifting through space on the Obian ship. "Inigon," Aezic answered. "We have no other choice."